Hey everyone, welcome back to Life After Neverland. We're talking about Supernatural, and if you haven't been tuning in, it's season 15 that we're talking about, and episode 7, you guys, last call for alcohol. Just kidding, it's called last call, but we know what that means, right? Anyway, okay, so Angela and Sally, these two little chickadoos, are coming out of a bar, and Sally is like barfy city sick, and Angela is like not having it, but she is a good supportive friend. And it basically boils down to, you think that Sally, the one that's barfing and inebriated and doesn't know what the heck's going on, is going to get murdered. But you know what? It's Angela, the one that is the sober friend, the one that is driving. So she basically disappears out of the middle of nowhere. Sally's up in the corner barfing somewhere, turns around, where's Angela? Gone. Okay. Interesting, right? Very interesting. It's a different flip. Wasn't expecting that. Then it pans over to Angela. She's kidnapped and her blood is being drained. And it's put into this cell with this like growling, creepy sounding creature. And then all of a sudden his head pops up. We don't get a big glimpse of what he looks like, but we know that he's creepy and we know that he likes blood. And then we see Dean, and believe it or not, he's drinking a beer. He's been drinking a lot lately. A lot more than I normally see him drink. And then we see him looking for a case. And I find that very endearing because in the last episode, Dean goes back and forth. At one moment, he's ready to give up. And the next moment, he just can't help himself. He's got to find a case. Because in all honesty, and one of the things I absolutely love about the character Dean Winchester is he just seriously cannot help himself. This is what he does best. This is the only thing that he knows how to do. And he's ready to do it again. He's ready to jump back in and try to help people again. Hunt and save people. But he's drinking in the morning because you see Sam and you see now Eileen together, and they're cooking breakfast and they're being all cute. In the last episode I said that they didn't have any chemistry. Well, they are growing on me together. Eileen is starting to grow on me, and her and Sam together are starting to grow on me. All right. I stand corrected. But the fact that Dean is drinking in the morning, in all honesty, is sad and disturbing to me. But I did like the little moment where Sam and Dean had a little brotherly moment. He sensed the connection between Eileen and Sam, and he's kind of like, you know what, if you two want to get a little frisky, just make sure to let me know, and I'll check you later. I'm going to go find a murder to solve. A hunt to solve. So Dean starts his search looking for Sally because he knows after talking to the sheriff that she's a little bit of a drinker. So he heads over to this Swayze bar. And I find this interesting. I never saw the movie Roadhouse. Have any of you guys ever seen the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze in it? And I feel like they were trying to put a little shout out to that movie just a little bit. I put 2 and 2 together. I know that movie existed, and I know Patrick Swayze was in it, and I feel like that's kind of what they were going with there. Just a little shout out there to Patrick Swayze. But Dean shows up, and he sees his old friend Lee. Now, there's this lady named Lorna, and she ends up stealing Dean's cell phone because this is a cell phone free zone, people, and that's going to come into play later. But, I do like this guy who played Lee. I thought he was a great actor. I feel like he was very endearing with Dean, and I felt like he really played a great part with the friendship vibe, okay? And being all concerned about Dean and all this good stuff after they haven't seen each other in a long while. Did you guys notice that they had a family business label on their beer? Yeah. And isn't it just so convenient that this episode was based supposedly in Texas? So I did like that. I thought that was great. But there was a part where, Dean, Lorna, and Lee, they're drinking, they're having some shots and all that good stuff. And then Lee gets up on stage and starts singing the Dukes of Hazzard. Shout out to Texas. The theme song, and Dean ends up getting up there and starts singing. And if you are a Jensen fan, you know that he has an amazing voice. And when you go to the conventions, Jensen is always singing. And it's quite fun. So that was a shout out to the fans who go to the conventions because they're all going to be like, ah! And of course, I loved it too. But My husband, he knows that I cannot stand it. I absolutely cannot stand it when they add like singing into shows, when an actor is a singer as well as an actor, and then they end up like throwing it in there somehow, because it usually ends up being very, very cheesy, and I cannot stand it. And I actually thought that they did very well with this. Like, as soon as it started happening, I started to get upset. Like, I was like, no, 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 no. Please do not do this. Don't do this. But I should know better, because Jensen's a good actor, and I feel like he did great. They played it well because, you know, Dean, I would imagine Dean would have to get quite tipsy or a little bit like, you know, comfortable having a few drinks to get up there on that stage and start singing. And I thought Jensen did a good job. You know, if they wanted to highlight Jensen's voice and play to the fans, I thought they did a good job with that. And good job, Jensen, because I can't stand that. I'm serious. But Jensen does have a beautiful voice, and I thought they played that really well. I really do. So now we go back. Let's go back to Eileen and Sam. They're kind of working together to try to figure out what's going on with Chuck and Lilith. They're trying to get an idea of where they can be located. And lo and behold, Cass shows up. And I thought that was amazing. You know how I am. I love it when Cass is up in this episode. So Cass shows up, and he said that when Sam shot God, part of his soul basically went into God. So, isn't that fascinating? And Cass decided to sort of probe Sam. These sexual innuendos are quite funny sometimes, and they always happen with Castiel, and Misha Collins always is on point with that. Like, he's on point with that. I love it. But anyways, he probed Sam's wound, and lo and behold, Sam goes flying up against the wall. Sam's always getting thrown up against the wall. They all are, but Sam does more than anyone, I feel like. And he's knocked out at this point. And so Castiel decides that the only option that he really has is to call this guy named Sergey. And I forgot, I've seen Sergey before, but, you know, after watching this episode, I was trying to recall, you know, what the heck was up with this dude. He is a healer, you know? And I really love this conversation that Castiel had with Sergey, because in my last episode, I was talking about how I really wanted to see Castiel finally step it up, and I hope that they're going along those paths, because Cass was being BA. He basically said, if you don't do what I ask, because Sergey was being very resistant. He was talking about his daughter, Anna, and how he just didn't have time because he needed to take her shopping. And Castiel was like, if you don't do what I say, I will literally hunt you down and burn you alive. Now, I was applauding at that point. Yes! Now, Castiel has woke. Thank you, Cass. Thank you. Finally, I've been waiting for this moment. And now we head over to Dean and Lee. And they're basically rehashing some of Dean's fabulous moments. You know, the moment where he saw the cat, he had the ghost sickness, and he screamed like crazy. Super funny moment. And then, of course, we talked about this a couple of minutes ago where he went on stage. He mentioned something about singing The Eye of the Tiger. Lee did. So, you know, he's playing to Dean and the memories. And I find that very manipulative, as usual. How annoying, you know? But they had this bar fight, and of course then they ended up finding Sally, because these guys were harassing Sally. Sally likes to frequent these bars quite a lot, you know? And again, like I said, very much Roadhouse related. After everything settled down, Dean was talking to Sally, getting a little bit more information. At this point, you start to kind of think, you know, Lee's a little bit sketchy. He's sketchy. You know, Dean said something about friends don't up and leave without saying goodbye. And then Lee was like, well, unless they deserve it. And he made a few comments like that in the beginning, too. They tried to show him Angela's picture, and he just blew it off. And I love that Lorna girl, because she just kept, like, floating by and, like, making comments that would make you think, you know, something stinks in suburbia, you know? For example, you know, Lee was saying to Dean, let's work this out together. We'll try to solve this together like we did old times. And Dean was like, well, where do you think I could find her? And he kept saying the lake. And Lorna would walk by and say, no, you should try the wrecking, what was it, like the wrecking place wherever the old cars are, you know, all old cars and things like that. And Lee continually was trying to gear Dean in a completely different direction. Obviously, very suspicious. Meanwhile, Cass Eileen and Sergey find out that Sam is dying. And he basically just puts like a little bit of ointment on his wound. And he basically is being a schneister. I made that word up. He is trying to manipulate Castiel because he knows that there's a key that the men of letters have. And he wants it because he can get into Death's library. But here comes my main man Castiel being as BA as ever. And him and Bobby collaborated. And you see earlier in the episode, Castiel calls this mysterious person and says that he needs help. He was calling my man Bobby. That's who he was calling, Bobby. And they captured Sergey's daughter, Anna, or at least we're using her as a manipulation tactic so Sergey would do what Castiel is asking, because I feel like Castiel was thinking in advance and knew that Sergey would do this. And Sergey was like, I like this new Cass. And you know what? I do too. He's like, fix Sam, ya bitch. Fix him. And I love that. That is not Russian Cass, Sergey. That is sexy Cass. Sexy Cass. I love it. Bring it on. I love sexy Cass. Now, Dean, Mr. Independent, he goes to the wrecking yard, like Lorna says, and he ends up finding Angela dead in a car. Boo. Unfortunate. But then you hear a gun click, and guess what? Oh, shocker. Not shocker. It was his friend Lee. His friend Lee is an a-hole. And he killed Angela. Ultimately, Lee captures Dean and puts him in the same predicament that he did Angela, sitting in a chair, tied up, and draining his blood. And at this point, I want to let you guys know that I really liked this episode. In fact, I loved this episode. The character Dean Winchester is awesome. I love Dean Winchester. And I'm so sad. I'm so sad that it's the last season because I don't want to let go. If anyone was to ever ask me, who's your favorite superhero? I think Dean Winchester is 100% my most favorite superhero. And I'm sad to see his story come to an end. And I'll never see him again. And I hate that. I absolutely hate that. I know I can't go on forever. 15 years is a lot. It's a lot of years, and it went really fast. It went so fast. Where did the time go? His character is amazing. How lucky for Jensen to find a character like that, and they do so well with him. This episode made me feel like, I don't know, it just got to the core of who Dean truly, truly is. And he has a beautiful soul, and I just love him so much. So he's sitting there, and you see that Lee and Dean were friends at one point. They were hunters together at one point. And then one went to the dark side, and obviously Dean could have gone to the dark side, and they've been showing us in these prior episodes that he's truly struggling with this win situation where he feels defeated. And at that point, you hit a fork in the road. You hit a fork in the road, and which way is Dean gonna go? And even with his friend turning on him and finding out that he is a monster, a human monster, not even like one of those creepy creatures, he still makes a good choice. Still. And I feel like, I know sometimes I get a little deep with these types of things, but like just in human nature, when we get beaten down and beaten down and beaten down over and over and over again, that's when we hit our fork in the road. And which way are we going to go? Are we going to become bitter and turn to the evil side and treat others like crap? Because that's what people ultimately do, don't they? Or you keep taking the hits and you keep trying to do better. And you don't give up. And that's what Dean chose to do in this episode. And I loved it. I loved it so much. Because Lee was saying he felt like he couldn't win. One of the hunts that they did in Arizona, I guess, is where he had his breaking point. And he ended up finding this monster. It was called Merid. And he became very selfish. And he decided that he would keep it captive because if he fed it and used humans as, a victim for this Merid, and then they ended up dying, innocent people dying, for his selfish needs, money, health. And he said something about all of his dreams come true. Isn't that something that you hear on the news and things like that, where, people are doing horrible, terrible things, one, because they're bitter, because they've either been bullied or treated horrible their entire life, or they become bitter because they've been treated horrible their entire life, and then they just start to become the most selfish, entitled, narcissistic human beings on the planet. And Dean could have gone down this path. I mean, look at all the horrible things that Dean and Sam have gone through, and not once did they ever choose to go down that path. I know I sound crazy, but I absolutely love this episode. I loved it. On that note, one of my favorite parts of this entire episode is when Lee sees that door that says private, and then all of a sudden the door opens and you see the monster's head roll. Obviously, we all knew Dean was not going to let that monster kill him. We all knew that he was going to survive. I mean, hello. But I just absolutely loved it. And then they had this showdown. I liked that a lot. And I thought it was neat because Dean was counting the bullets that Lee was shooting. And they were both out. And at that point, Dean saved the day and stabbed Lee. And they had this little moment. And my favorite line in the entire episode was when Dean said, "You don't walk away from a broken world. You fight for it. And I kill monsters." And that's epic because he was killing a human. And that human turned into a monster. And it was Dean's friend. And then Lee was like, "Well, why do you care so much, Dean?" And then Dean said, "Because someone has to." I love it. I just freaking love it. I always thought that Jensen would be a good Batman. I really did. And then recently I saw on Instagram that he was dressed up as Batman and everything. I loved it. I don't know if he just did that, like if he had a friend photograph him for, shiz and giggles. Because, of course, he looks amazing in it. But I hope Jensen knows that, Dean Winchester is almost as good, if not better, than Batman, in my eyes. And I'm sure in many girls' eyes, but what a great character. If you can be an actor and you get to pick, if you have, selected parts that you could actually pick from and you could have any part that you wanted, dude, if I was a guy, I would take Dean Winchester in a heartbeat. I would take that in a heartbeat. Let me play that part, please. So in wrapping, Dean comes home. And he is face-to-face with Castiel for the first time since Cass was sent away. It was a little awkward, but it made me very happy because I feel like they're all back together again. And they do have Eileen, and boy, Eileen seems to be a BA. I mean, she's shown it quite a few times this season. I know she just came back, but last episode and this episode, she didn't mess around. That's for sure. She took Sergey, and he's a big man, and she lifted him up and was like, I ain't having that. Okay, so I am going to enjoy, I guess, having Eileen back. The only thing is now Sam is dying. What are we going to do about this, people? And the thing is that they don't have a lot to fight back God. So like I said in the last episode as well, they had that one spell from Rowena, and they used it on Eileen. So Eileen, you need to step it up, woman. And I think she might. They've got Cass back, so they've got a bit of a team together now because they don't have Rowena. So Eileen, maybe she's, filling in Rowena's spot. Let's see. Now, all I need is Jack back. Let's get Jack back now, and then Corinne will be a happy camper. But Sam says that he knows that he has God's memories. He has them. And he has this connection. In a couple episodes prior, he was kind of mentioning that he kind of has this connection with God. And Sergey said the same thing. He's connected to something. We all know he's connected to God. So I do like where this is going. We all knew that it was coming to this, basically. But it is interesting. And I can't wait to see what they're going to have in store for us. Thank you for pulling it together. This is my supernatural roller coaster. It's like, but it's okay. It's okay. I love the characters. The characters are what keep me going. How about you guys? Now, In wrapping up, I have questions for you. All right. What was your favorite part in this episode? Did you like it as much as I did? How do you feel about Dean Winchester? Which character is your favorite? Is it Castiel, Sam, Dean, Bobby? Do you like Eileen? Do you like the part that she's starting to play and how she's starting to step things up? And what do you think is going to happen next? All right, you guys, we are 100% caught up. So can't wait to talk to you. Please stay tuned in. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell your friends. Hit the like button. And I can't wait to talk to you guys next week. Have a great one. Mwah! Bye, everybody.